I have several questions. I actually was writing down the questions because there's so many to count.
That's the problem with giving an open context thing, like, hey, here's 1,000 feet of range you can cover. It's like, okay.
I know that's the best part of talking with you. You know so much. It's always fun to sort of then pick and choose what we get into. But you mentioned this very important concept that people think that blockchain is anonymous, and that's incorrect. And then you talk about the difference between
largely incorrect. There's some instances where it could be anonymous, but in the use cases that we're talking about, right? The work that we do, that's certainly not the case. There's definitely a know your customer element to it.
So that's exactly my question, which is, could you talk a little bit about the difference between privacy and anonymity in the context of blockchain, and how you can be both one or neither depending on context?
Yeah, it's a very kind of it's a nuanced scenario. It's one that I think you gotta really mulch through, because I'm not a fan of like one answer fits all, right? It doesn't, right? So this is what we do. This is what we do, for instance, with Rice Hash, right? You may remember from prior conversations that we basically use non-fungible tokens, not the expensive ones that you find on Ethereum, where like a little 5-second video costs $10,000. Not that, because that's not practical. We do it with different technology, but regardless, we use a token that is essentially unique, right? That's what non-fungible really means. It's indivisible, it's unique, and we associate it to any number, like one or more digital objects. Now, it could be consent, it could be a document, it could be a vaccine, QR code, whatever. That doesn't really matter. But the thing that does matter to us is this, the way we do it. And I'm not prescribing this is the way to do it. It's just how we do it, and we think it makes sense for our context. What we do is that we put some trail of information, not trailer information, on the public ledger that basically says, look, this transaction was done at this time. It costs like X fee. The payer, like it could be Acoer or our clients or whoever, this is their ID. This is the payer ID. This is the transaction function. Like, for instance, if we were doing like create document, we show that it was a create document. So those things are public. You can go and interrogate it. It also shows our cryptographic signature. It shows that, like, Jim Nasr signed this, and that's a unique signature tied to that particular person or organization.
Jim, we have your product up here. Could you talk about how I'd even see that?
Yeah, if you go and click on the demo, you'll see this. It's in the video, and there's an audio and stuff, but this will be there. Again, I don't want to distract from this, but the video will definitely show it, and we can obviously do other demos. And we have on our YouTube channel, we have much lengthier demos as well that kind of walk through all this stuff. But what I'm going to do is this. The information that I put in here, that information is that I just described, that metadata, if you like. And unfortunately, Facebook has ruined the word meta as well now. But regardless, I mean, seriously, it's like let's pick the least intelligent word to describe a company. So anyway, where I'm going with this is that information essentially is out there in public. It's on the ledger, right? What we also have some other information that essentially is encrypted. It's what we call hashed, such as the content of the document or the QR code that refers to your vaccine status. That is also there, but that is encrypted. There's a very strong encryption is used to put that, if you like, that encrypted reference on the ledger. Now, what is that useful for? That's privacy preserving. That takes your, let's say, as example, your health record addendum or update, and puts a reference, an encrypted reference, on the public ledger. You can't look at that encrypted reference and re-engineer it, unless you have quantum computing, or, we're some way ahead of where we're at right now from technology. You never know, but let's put it this way: it's extremely unlikely, right? And it would take an enormous amount of resources. So there's this encrypted reference. So what is it useful for if you can't really do anything with it? What's useful is that if somebody says, prove to me that really it was, James QR code at this time, you could take that encrypted public reference, which is an immutable reference on a ledger that's not controlled by Jim or Darshan or Amazon or Facebook or none of that, right? It's on multiple computers. you could use that and then reference back an internal secure database and say, oh, look, it turns out that really was, that transaction that's publicly out there really did refer back to this actual health record that is private, secure, and a secure system that's not on a public ledger. That's the idea. So what that amounts to then, is essentially it's a privacy preserving way to show a trail of information, right? So that's how we do it. Again, it's not to say it's the only way of doing it, but we think that's a way in which you could have some data that's useful publicly and shows the trail of information, shows chain of custody of information, or essentially shows the connecting of the information. But then the actual information, the actual consent, or the actual QR code or whatever, that is not public at all. That's private, and you can only get it with the right kind of permissions, with the right kind of authority and jurisdiction. So that's not going to be just like you would. If you're going to go and subpoena somebody's records, you got to have some kind of a court ordered document that allows you to do so. It's the same kind of thing. You can't just go and look at a ledger and say, oh, wow, Jim had a COVID vaccination at this time or whatever. That's not, that wouldn't make sense. So this is really the idea of privacy preservation, something that looks anonymous. Like if you look from the outside, that information that's encrypted looks anonymous, but in reality, it's really pseudonymized, which means that on the one side, on the public side, you see it as an encrypted, like some kind of anonymous gibberish, but there's a reference to the actual information that's stored somewhere off the chain and in a secure environment. That's HIPAA compliant.
So here, that's a really important question you just raised, which was what I'm hearing you say is that on the chain, you may one of the ways to do this is on the chain you put on information that that is publicly accessible, so you can track the information to a certain point, and then there's, for lack of a better term, an air gap between the actual data and the information on the blockchain. And the only way to get to that is someone who actually has the appropriate controls, the appropriate keys to get past it.
Precisely.
So,
in fact, the keys thing is very important. You mentioned that, because the way we would practically implement that, like how you would see it, is would have one or more keys that, as example, you have to have, say you lose your house keys, right? And you basically say, to your neighbor, look, if these 3 out of these 5 other people, come and attest that I really am Darshan, because, whatever, maybe you've lost a lot of weight, or in my case, you have dementia, then it's okay for you to give me the key to open my door. It's more or less as that kind of an idea. So but of course, we're talking about cryptographic keys and private keys and things like that.
Right.